Witold Sosnowski, huge applause. Thank you.
1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? All right, cool. So nice to meet you. I'm Witold. I work at Monday.com. Wait, the clicker needs to turn on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and in general, I work a lot on different projects, and okay, now I know why it doesn't work. Okay, cool. So I'm a team lead at Monday.com. I worked a lot on different projects. I have obsession with productivity, and I really believe that the developer experience is really, really important in our day-to-day work. So let's talk a little bit about developer experience. It's essentially all the things that prevent you from doing your work. There is a lot of, in our careers, stuff that we need to do that doesn't really push us forward. Some of those things are related to setup. Some of those things are organizational burdens. And I wanted to talk today about the things that you encounter on the very first day of a project, or maybe joining a company, which is essentially setting up your development environment. So how does it usually look like? When you join a new company, or start on a new project, or maybe on an old one, sometimes this happens, essentially. You pull on one thing, or you need to do one thing, and then it turns out that it's a whole Jenga of things that you now need to do just to start working. And we don't want that. So let's talk about what usually happens when somebody joins a company. So first thing that they need to do is install some kind of tooling on their machine. And there are multiple ways to actually solve this. One of those ways is some kind of instruction. So I go into like a document, and I read it, and I get install, git, docker, some other stuff. And apart from Docker, I also need to install Node.js, actually 4 version of Node.js, and Ruby, and Go. Oh, did I mention Scala? It's a zoo of technology, essentially. And the problem is, everything that you need to do, you don't even know if it's actually necessary or not. There is an instruction. You need to install everything. And what happens then? We installed our machine. We installed some dependencies, libraries. What now? OK, so we are running our project. And oh no, libsys doesn't compile because we have an old Python. Found a solution on the company wiki. 2 hours gone. But we proceed. And then where do we get env variables from? Oh, well, there is .env.local.example, so I guess I'm going to use that one. Yeah, it doesn't work. It's outdated. So I wait for a friend, a coworker, and I ask them, hey, what's going on? And they say, yeah, you need to add this value. We forgot to update the env.local.example. And another day passes by because they were on the meetings. And yeah, by the way, are the database seeds loaded automatically? Nope, you need to run a script. Another 2 hours gone. You wasted a lot of time. And essentially, all of that work is unnecessary. It makes you really angry because you just wasted like 3 or 4 days, and you really didn't do anything yet. So let's solve it. One of the ways that you can actually solve it is by writing a script. So you write like a bash script or Python script, and it will install everything that you need on your computer. So there is a lot of problems with that. So this single team is using Scala. Should we install Scala for everyone or just for this single team? Now we need to manage the whole script for every single team, right? Or maybe not. So you have 2 different versions of OpenSSL for different projects. Linux and macOS don't really like that. It's not very easy. So we are coming back to, after a year or 2, to our script. And oh no, new OS X now has Python 3 and not Python 2. Our script stopped working for some reason. That's amazing. And the new team member joined, and you are using Windows. Now we need to rewrite everything. Great. So attempt number 2. Let's use Docker. Now we have 2 problems. So essentially, we create a Docker file per project. We install all the tools within the container. and create a Docker Compose with all the services that we need, like PostgreSQL, Redis, whatever is needed on the backend. We will create a service for it and run it. And mount all the local files as volumes so that we can change the files and everything will reload within the container so that we don't have to copy everything. And add some environment variables from a file. So at least you will not have to ask a worker to actually set up this for us. And we are done, right? Well, not exactly. There are a lot of problems. Now, all the tools can only be used within the container, or you need to kind of wrap them around with Docker run, which is cumbersome and still needs to be explained to people. If you want them available everywhere, you need to put them in every container now, and not just the one that we are running. Like if you log into Postgres and you want to use Git for whatever reason, you need to install them everywhere. If you add a tool and you have multiple services, you will need to rebuild all the images. And if the distribution doesn't contain the package that you need, oh no, now you're compiling from source. That's lovely. And if you're compiling with source, we all have all those library compatibilities that I mentioned before, which is also fun. And Docker builds aren't really fully reproducible. So if you have from Docker node.20, sometimes you can actually be surprised that it's not what you expected. And you cannot really have any GUI applications. You want to install Visual Studio Code for everyone with predefined set of extensions? Yeah, can't have that. Well, it's not easy to use your own shell configuration either. You can't have your own aliases. I'm using K for kubectl. I'm using O for opening files. And there is a lot of stuff that people do to make their lives easier in the bash. So once you drop them into your container, they can't use that. So we are screwed, essentially. Or are we? Maybe there is a solution. There would be no like we wouldn't have this talk if there weren't. So let's first think about what our perfect solution would look like. What do we actually want to achieve? So the first thing is single stop shop for everything. Like we are describing the perfect tool. Like we are daydreaming today. So single stop shop for everything. We don't want to have multiple managers that manage everything that we do, libraries and configuration. We want to have everything as part of the project repository, so it can be tracked together. If you are changing the dependency, you actually want to change it in the project repo and have it for everyone updated automatically. You want reproducible builds. You want to make sure that if you didn't explicitly ask for an update, it will not update your package. You want very fast setup. You don't want to wait, I don't know, 30 minutes for the whole application or all the images to actually build. You want something that works everywhere. Windows, Linux, OS X, FreeBSD maybe. Allows to run GUI applications, Firefox. Anything like abstract software that you are using during your day-to-day. There are a lot of teams that are using very, very weird things, and they also need to be installed. Sometimes you have the MDMA, where the IT department manages that, but sometimes you don't have an IT department, and you still want to do that. And doesn't cause conflicts with other projects. So if you install something on one project, and then you switch to the other, or better yet, you actually switch to the other and run them in parallel, they don't conflict with each other. And ages slowly, so that you can be sure that after 5 years, if you come back to the project, it will actually still work. And it's easy to use for everyone. A very short list, only 9 points. No biggie, right? But it doesn't sound like there is something like that. Or is there? So there is something called Nix packages. Nix packages is a repository. It's a part of a whole ecosystem of Nix. You have Nix the language, NixOS the operating system, and Nix packages is something that is part of NixOS. So basically it's an NPM for software and its configuration. And what it has is over 100,000 different packages, more than in the Arch Linux hour. Basically anything that you can imagine is probably there. And if it's not, it's quite easy to actually add it there. You have declarative configuration. What it means we will see in a second. Reproducible builds. We have ability to install multiple versions of the same package. There is like a whole distribution that is built around it. You can use that one. I highly recommend it if you are very patient, because it's not easy. You can read about it here a little bit more, but in general, it's amazing. So let's use it. Very simple. Just learn the Nix language, understand how modules, packages, and flakes work, create your own Nix flake, and then run one single command, and everything works, right? Uh-oh. That doesn't look too user-friendly. The last point from our requirements list is not, I don't think it is fulfilled. So what can we do about that? Yeah, well, you could use that, and I actually do. But if you are working with a team or are expecting other people to use this, it's probably not something you would want to do. So there is a solution. There is devenv. Devenv is a tool that uses NixOS under the hood, and it can do a lot of things for you automatically. So it can manage installed software. It can handle the configuration of it, so that you can actually put like a port for PostgreSQL or maybe the extensions or something. And then it allows you to define all the environment variables and then run tasks, like maybe run a database migration when you enter the directory of the project. Or manage Git hooks. You want your slint running during Git hooks, you can use like Node libraries for that, or you can use devenv. Load and load everything automatically by using devenv. So if you are entering the directory, devenv actually will install everything for you, put you into the directory, and you will have everything working within a few minutes. And the last one is build containers of our local environment. So you can actually create the description of your local environment, package it as a Docker image, push it to Codespaces, and use that on GitHub Codespaces without any additional work required except from building the Docker itself. And all of that you have essentially defined as a type-safe, declarative, single configuration file that you can split into modules, but as you will see, you don't have to. So let's start with a short demo. So right now we don't really have anything installed. It's a clear Linux virtual machine. We are installing Nix right now. Downloaded a script, run it, and it's unpacked and installed. Now we are installing devenv. So my typing is not as fast as I would like to. We are waiting. Nix is installing devenv right now. Okay, it's being installed. And after that runs, we can actually run devenv init. And devenv init is something that will create a devenv configuration within our project's directory. It will create a few files such as envrc, devenv.nix, devenv.yaml, and gitignore. It will append itself to gitignore to skip some of the directories that it will create. And it's ready. So how can you actually use it? You have a few commands. You have devenv shell. It will enter you into the shell of your project, and it will set up all the environment variables, install all the packages, put them into your scope, like update your path and everything. Devenv app will start all the services that you defined, like your PostgreSQL, for example. And then you have devenv test. That one, you can define essentially a command that will be running your tests. Devenv update, that's just updating your packages and saving a log file. So every single time that you are actually running devenv update, it will create a log file for your environment. You are committing it exactly the same as package.json log. And you have your whole list of packages actually locked into very specific versions. And they are reproducibly built, which means that you cannot have a situation where you're getting something else. And devenv.gc, it cleans out unused packages from your cache. Well, but there is no devenv install. How do I add something here? Well, you use the config. The config is actually a file. It's called devenv.nix. And it's very simple. You just put your configuration about your project here, and it will do everything for you. So for JavaScript, for running Node.js application, that's all you need. And one of that line is due to a bug in devenv because they mixed up the packages that you need to install. Wait, but I want to actually use ban instead of Node. Yeah, sure, no problem. Here, done. You can actually do that. And now you can just run devenv shell. It will put you into the shell, and then you can execute Node version. You can execute ban version. Everything just runs. It's there, done. So we can also add some environment variables. You can define them here. And actually, it will define some of the environment variables for you. If you, for example, use a service like PostgreSQL, it will define from the PostgreSQL config some environment variables within your environment. And you can define services, for example, Postgres. So if you have here your service, it's everything that you need to define a Postgres that has two extensions that are being loaded automatically with the database seed that loads from a file, only if the database wasn't created before. So essentially, if someone runs your project and they execute devenv processes up, then you will get like PostgreSQL running with your database seed, with everything essentially ready to open your website. And as I said, it will define also some environment variables for you as well. So once you execute PSQL, you will actually not have to define everything from the console because it will be already in the end variables. It's essentially magical. And hooks it with linters. There is a lot of linters supported by default. So you don't have to write a script. You're just saying, enable preter for me, and slint, and rip secrets, please. And once you do that, they just run automatically. They add to your Git config, and they work. There are packages that you can actually install from the repository, specifically. Like, essentially, if you're adding Postgres services Postgres enabled true, under the hood, it will actually add that Postgres into the packages array, so that you don't have to do that yourself. But because some of the packages don't require additional configuration, you can just add them, and it can be anything. It can be Firefox, it can be Docker, it can be whatever you actually need to work with your project day to day. And because you have like, let's say you have a project that wasn't touched in 5 years, and you need some kind of specific version of the program to actually launch it, it will work like that out of the box because you are locking your specific package version 5 years ago. So you're going back to the project, to the state that it was before. And then you can update the package, but you don't have to. All right. We can also run some tasks. So you can create a task and say that every time someone enters the shell, so execute devenv shell command, this task will execute. We will migrate the database every time someone enters, so that there is no situation where someone opens your dev environment and they don't apply migrations, and then everything fails and they waste your time because they don't know that they need to run a migration because someone added one. Nice, isn't it? Yeah, well, that's it. It was easy, right? Doomsday avoided. You can read the presentation here. This is the URL. It's hosted on the internet. Essentially, any questions?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I would like to know if it's possible to install a desktop app.
Yeah, totally.
So actually, do you have like, how it will look like? Because so far I have seen only everything in a terminal.
Yep. So the way it will work, it will actually, the way Nix in general works is it creates something called the store. That store is just a directory with all the applications prefixed by some random hash. So if you are installing, for example, Firefox, it will install Firefox into that directory. It will be put there, and it will be kept there. Every version, you can have 20 Firefox versions installed in parallel. And every time you enter the shell, it will add that link that Firefox binary into a directory that will then be used as an entry in your path. So you just run a Firefox command from your shell, and you will launch a GUI application, because there is no isolation. It's not Docker. It's using your system internally. If you're on OS X, it will install Darwin version of Firefox. It will not install like 32-bit Firefox. It will actually install ARM version of Firefox. And if you launch the command, it will actually run the program. That's it. So you can actually go into like 2 projects directories with 2 Firefox versions in both directories, and launch Firefox from one, launch Firefox from other, and you will have 2 instances of Firefox with 2 different versions. It will work because of the magic that Nix actually does.
why I didn't know this 5 years ago. Thank you for the... the real question is, how are the package versions are stored in cloud? Because it's a big problem, for example, for Arch to store all the package versions in the cloud and install like arbitrary package version from 5 years ago.
Yeah, so essentially there is a Nix, like a Nix package repository. It's something very similar to any other Linux distribution. They have a huge, like I think S3, essentially they are using. So all the packages are stored, compiled and stored in S3. I think they were paying like $50,000 per month for hosting it, so it's not as much as I would expect, but they did have issues with like paying for the storage. And for your own packages, you can actually use something called Cachix. It's essentially a service that is paid, but the way it works is if you have your own, let's say, dev environment, and you run devenv shell in it, it will actually build some of the stuff. Sometimes you need to compile something to get your environment. Cachix will actually cache it, put it into the cache remotely, and if the other person actually goes into the same dev environment with the same log file, they won't be building anything. They will just download it from the cache.
Great presentation. I think we don't talk enough about setting up developer environment, and I think it would be super useful. I myself spent a couple of days setting up the project. It was crazy. Yeah. So anyway, I remember your previous talk about VS Code and how we should commit all the settings. Yep. And how would you say, is there some kind of bridge between VS Code and Nix?
I actually didn't test VS Code specifically, but the whole idea around Nix is to put everything, configuration of whole system into a single file that is like a declarative configuration of your system, up to a point where you're describing which wallpaper you should use. So the packages actually have config values that you can use. So for Firefox, you can enable extensions. You can replace the search engine by default. You can basically control almost everything that is within the about config. And if you are missing some kind of configuration values, because obviously the space of configuring your environment is infinite almost, you can always create the files from within the Nix config. So you're saying, okay, I don't have the configuration value, but please put this file into this path so that Firefox can actually use it. And you have like a prefix of like a Firefox profile, for example. So you're creating the file there, and Firefox will be able to read it so that you can kind of bypass the Nix config part. But yeah. You can actually see, like, for Postgres, you can define like username, initial databases, extensions, some settings, actually all the settings that you can put in like Postgres conf, you can actually put in this array. So it's quite extensive. I really like it.
Obviously, I have one more question. So that would be, let's say there is someone who would like to introduce Nix into their project, into their workflow. What would be your, let's say, kind of elevator pitch? How to sell this, that, yes, this is really going to speed us up? What would be, this kind of 30 seconds-ish elevator pitch to?
I think I would pick a project, create a config for it, and just use it in front of them, because honestly, it's magical, and you can actually see like you don't need to do anything. That would be the whole elevator pitch.
Okay, thank you very much, Witold.
Cool.
Warsaw.